Red Tide is the first half of American Horror Story's 10th season double feature, which as a whole has a reputation for being one of the series' sloppiest seasons. But before season 10 completely dove off the deep end, fans were hooked with some genuinely promising episodes, and at first we were convinced that the season's all-star cast and its atmospheric cinematography would result in a season that would resemble the golden age of the series. But before we unpack all of Red Tide's squandered potential, I first want to dig a little bit deeper into the season's troubled production history, as the shoot for Red Tide was actually halted for an entire year due to COVID-19. American Horror Story Season 10 was first announced on February 26, 2020, which just so happened to be exactly 2 weeks before the World Health Organization declared COVID a pandemic, and so much of the world, including Hollywood, inevitably shut down. But this was the before times where something like that seemed unheard of, so the AHS team felt comfortable teasing Season 10 earlier than usual, with the season's main ensemble being revealed in a post to Instagram. It was also reported around this time that Season 10 would be beginning production in Provincetown, Massachusetts in March of 2020, which would have been the earliest an AHS season had ever started production, since most AHS production cycles begin in the summertime. The choice to film on location in Provincetown, Massachusetts reflected the season's story, which also takes place in Provincetown and was the second American Horror Story season to take place in the state of Massachusetts, after Season 2's Asylum, but Asylum was filmed in Los Angeles. This March 2020 shoot, of course, was not meant to be, and neither was that initial ensemble that was announced for Season 10, which featured the likes of AHS alums Sarah Paulson, Evan Peters, Lily Rabe, Finn Wittrock, Adina Porter, Billy Lord, Leslie Grossman, Angelica Ross, and Kathy Bates. If you're familiar with Season 10, you know that Kathy Bates did not end up appearing in Season 10, but more on that later. It was also around this time that Ryan Murphy reposted a fan-made poster for Season 10 that for a while served as a placeholder for a real poster, since once the pandemic was declared on March 11th, all major film and television productions, including AHS, were halted, right before the AHS production was about to begin. The following 10 months would be a guessing game for when Hollywood would return to normalcy, but by fall of 2020, a lot of major productions were testing the waters of what this new reality would be, shooting under such intense health protocols. But Ryan Murphy had previously stated that what they had originally intended on shooting in Provincetown was very dependent on the winter weather. So in order to recapture that weather again, AHS actually did not start shooting until February 2021, almost an entire year after their originally planned shoot. Back then, the general consensus was that they had intended on filming earlier, like around December, but right around December is when SAG-AFTRA kind of shut down all productions after a lot of COVID outbreaks. But by the time AHS actually did start filming in February of 2021, the marketing team had treated fans to the first official teaser poster for Season 10, which featured a gnarly set of fangs and the words AHS 10 tattooed on a tongue. And once cameras were rolling in Provincetown, fans began to get some new tidbits and set photos like normal, but this time it also came with some bittersweet news, since it was around this time that fans found out that Kathy Bates would not actually end up appearing in Season 10, and in her place, AHS legend Frances Conroy was tapped in instead. And by March, Ryan Murphy had finally spilled the beans about the title of Season 10, Double Feature. This title reveal was accompanied by a teaser, which sort of explained the meaning behind the title. Season 10 would consist of 2 stories, one by the sea and one by the sand. Eventually, these 2 separate stories would be given their own subtitles as well, with the first half being named Red Tide, and part 2 going by the name of Death Valley. Ryan Murphy elaborated on this in an Instagram comment where he claimed that this meant that fans would be getting 2 full seasons of AHS in 1 calendar year, double the viewing pleasure. But with these 2 seasons having a measly combined 10 episodes, this does feel like a bit of false advertising. But enough said about this season's truly troubled production cycle. Let's now talk a little bit about how this season was promoted to fans. By the summer of 2021, the ad campaign for Double Feature had commenced with some of the ugliest teasers and posters to ever come out of the show's marketing department. Like, honestly, I do not know what they were thinking. The teasers mostly feature two figures that represent the two stories within Double Feature. To represent Red Tide, we got a misleading peek at the pale people featured in the season. In the teasers, they are portrayed as some sort of sea monster, shown swimming and dragging their prey into the ocean. But aside from Provincetown being a beachside town, the water doesn't actually have a lot to do with the story, and by no means are these pale people associated with the ocean. To represent Death Valley in these teasers, we were given these generic-looking Martian characters, which are not too dissimilar from the actual alien characters we will end up seeing in Death Valley. To me, the teasers and posters for Double Feature are just very visually unappealing, and especially with Red Tide, they feel like they misrepresent the season. But by August, AHS had won me back over with a really promising trailer for Red Tide, teasing familiar family dynamics, zany characters, and some really promising visuals. So without further ado, let's unpack this first half of Double Feature for what it is, starting with episode 1. Red Tide's premiere episode is entitled Cape Fear, a loose nod to the 1962 horror film and its 1991 Martin Scorsese remake. After an unprecedented 651 days off of the air due to the pandemic, American Horror Story returns with a bang, immediately smacking audiences in the face with a new aspect ratio, a unique color palette, and some distinct, bright, and striking visuals. These immediate visual differences are likely due to the season tapping in a new cinematographer, Andrew Mitchell. After a career full of various camera department gigs, he eventually got swooped into the Murphyverse, working as a camera operator on many projects, including Glee and Scream Queens, but AHS Double Feature was Mitchell's first time serving as a DP for a full season of television, since he not only serves as DP for Red Tide, but Death Valley as well. One of the strengths of Double Feature is its cinematography and its visual choices, so that is largely due to this guy, so credit where it is due. But now let's move on to the actual plot of Red Tide. We first meet the Gardners. AHS veteran Finn Wittrock plays Harry Gardner, a creatively blocked screenwriter, and fellow AHS veteran Lily Rabe plays Doris Gardner, a former teacher and aspiring interior designer, carrying her second child. Her first child is Alma Gardner, a homeschooled violin prodigy who is in the back seat and is played by child actress Ryan Kiera Armstrong. This family trio is a variant of the many dysfunctional families of AHS past, but they most strikingly resemble the Harmons from back in season 1, which also features a doomed married couple with one kid and another on the way. The Gardners are traveling to Provincetown, Massachusetts for a temporary 3-month stay in hopes that Harry can get some inspiration to push through his writer's block and finish writing his TV pilot. As you'll see throughout Red Tide, there are several prominent Provincetown locations featured, but pretty much anytime you'll see a character indoors, those scenes were actually filmed back in Los Angeles on a soundstage. Alma counts roadkill out the window and says,
"It's weird how it's more sad when a cat gets run over than a raccoon does."
before the family is stopped in their tracks by the large corpse of a deer. Harry investigates the animal and finds its neck to be viciously torn apart. As the Gardners drive away, the deer's corpse is quickly dragged off screen. And that is when we are treated to Red Tide's title sequence, which, as usual, is packed full of symbols and references to the events in the season. Some of the images in the title sequence include a chemist's laboratory, red meat, blood, drugs, x-rays of the human brain, a typewriter, a violin, and several pieces of Provincetown geography and iconography. When it comes to the soundtrack, it's the classic AHS theme used in the early seasons as well as Apocalypse and Delicate, but this mix does use some sound effects from the visuals like the typewriter and the boiling of chemicals. And in the end credits of Red Tide, we do get a brand new rendition of the theme song, which honestly to me feels a bit Western. But after the title sequence, we get a gorgeous establishing shot of Provincetown in the wintertime, featuring the historic Pilgrim Monument before the Gardners arrive at their new temporary home, where they're met by Martha, the property manager. Martha is played by Robin Weigert, who we just talked about in my Roanoke deep dive. In Roanoke, she was unrecognizable as Mama Polk, the real Mama Polk. Martha is her third and final AHS role as of 2025, and to be honest, there's not much to this character, especially when compared to her intense rendition of Mama Polk, but we'll see a tiny bit more of her later on. Doris tells Martha that her interior design Instagram page is what convinced the homeowners to allow the Gardners to stay in their house free of charge in exchange for her Doris Gardner original renovation. When Doris shows her Instagram to Martha, though, we see that the post she chose only has one like, and it's Doris herself. This is not super relevant to the story, but I could read into it a little bit more and say that it's an early indication that the only person that believes in Doris's dreams are herself. But on the surface, this is another instance of this show's many silly moments when it comes to showing characters' phone screens. The important thing to take away from these character introductions is that this is a family that is centered around creativity. Harry works as a struggling screenwriter, Doris is in the early stages of building an interior design business, and Alma, as you'll see, is an extremely advanced violinist for her age. Harry takes a solo trip to the local grocery store where he's met by a local legend who goes by the name of Tuberculosis Karen.
Get the fuck out of here, fucker! Out of this town!
Underneath this inspired hair and makeup and Mickey Mouse voice,
Go fuck yourself, motherfucker!
is, of course, none other than Sarah Paulson. This season marked Sarah's return to the show after she took her first ever season off in season 9. One of my biggest gripes with Red Tide is that Tuberculosis Karen does not get enough screen time. But even with the minimal screen time she does get, Karen and Paulson give this half season its most emotionally impactful and complete character arc. Before being shooed off by an employee, Karen warns Harry,
Get out!
You may recognize this grocery store from a few different TV shows or movies, but if you're an AHS fan, you probably already know that this is the same grocery store that was used in the premiere episode of AHS Cult. You know, the one where the clowns were getting it on next to the pineapples and Sarah Paulson was throwing bottles of rosé at the dildo face on a scooter. Yeah, that one. Later, Harry gets frustrated at his daughters practicing, so Doris takes her out for a walk to give Harry some peace of mind.
We were all so happy that day. It's actually hard to even imagine how terrible things would soon become.
As they walk through the cemetery, Alma immediately delivers some killer one-liners.
I wonder if the pilgrims are buried here. I wonder what killed them. Maybe something cool and ancient like dysentery or plague.
The ladies' leisurely walk escalates to a brisk jog when they lock eyes with a tall, bald, and pale man in a long gray trench coat. The man chases them and contorts his body, but they make it inside in the nick of time. He tries to break into their house before giving up, screaming in Harry's face, then fucking right off. After that incident, the local police chief pays the Gardners a visit. Her name is Chief Burleson, and she is played by one of my favorite AHS cast members, Adina Porter, but in what is most definitely her most disappointing role, to no fault of her own, but more on that later. Chief Burleson is pretty apathetic to the Gardners' safety concerns, and she says that the local homeless population is harmless. And then Doris brings up Lyme disease for about the 5th time in 15 minutes.
Well, don't touch it. You don't want to get Lyme.
There's Lyme disease all over this area.
You know, I have read that Lyme disease can cause some very strange neurological symptoms.
Chief Burleson does her best to assure Harry and Doris that P-Town is safe, but that night Harry begins to research a recent unsolved murder case that begs to differ. Meanwhile, Alma gets jump-scared through the window by the same pale man from earlier, but when she tells her parents, Harry doubts her story, and Doris doubts that the police would be any help. So the girls head to bed while Harry tries to pull an all-nighter to work on his screenplay. But the sun rises and the Word document remains empty. While running on the beach, Harry comes across 2 dead bodies with similarly grotesque wounds as the deer. The police are not super worried about these dead bodies, which concerns Harry, but he keeps this incident from his family. After Doris gets sick, Harry goes out alone to the only place open during the winter, a lounge bar called The Muse. At The Muse are two more AHS legends, as both Francis Conroy and Evan Peters return to AHS after also taking a break during season 9. Their characters are Austin Summers and Belle Noire, and this duo is currently doing a drunken duet of Islands in the Stream by Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers. AHS is no stranger to a musical number, with Asylum featuring the iconic Name Game musical number spearheaded by Jessica Lange. Stevie Nicks also delivered some stellar songs in both Coven and Apocalypse, and Freak Show memorably featured 5 time-bending musical numbers performed by Jessica Lange, Evan Peters, and Sarah Paulson. Austin and Belle talk to Harry after their performance and tell him that, just like him, they're writers. Austin is an accomplished playwright, and Belle is an accomplished romance novelist, and they've developed a habit of spending their winters in Provincetown.
This place, it just, inspires us.
Just then, Karen bursts in and croaks some more warnings Harry's way.
You stay away from those two. Stay away from all these blood-sucking motherfuckers. Out.
Also hanging around the Muse is Mickey, played by AHS first-timer Macaulay Culkin, who unsuccessfully shoots his shot with Harry using some R-rated pickup lines. Later that night, Harry prepares for another all-nighter, but he ends up attacked by a pale man who made his way inside. In self-defense, Harry kills him. Elsewhere, Belle and Mickey negotiate payment after hooking up with each other, and Belle offers to add an extra $300 to suck Mickey's blood. Mickey declines, saying Belle has nearly killed him doing this exact thing in the past, but Belle does not take no for an answer. She removes her veneers, covering a set of fangs, and she cuts open one of Mickey's arteries and gets to sucking. This is the first confirmation of the season that we're dealing with bloodsuckers, which is not the first nor the last time this has happened in the series. Most notably, Hotel features several characters affected by a vampiric blood disease that requires them to drink blood, and in Season 3, Episode 8 of American Horror Stories, we learn about a species of blood-sucking leprechauns. Later, Belle calls Karen and says that she must kidnap a local baby for her. Belle has a hold over people like Karen and Mickey and gets them to do her dirty deeds because she claims she can give them protection from the aggressive pale people all around town. The next day, the Gardners pack up and prepare to head back to New York City after their traumatic home invasion, but just then Harry gets a call from Austin inviting him over. At Austin's place, he offers Harry a bag of little black pills that he says boost creative inspiration.
Tragic, magic, little black pills.
Harry declines the pills, but Austin is persistent, and eventually Harry takes the baggie home. Back at the house, Harry gets a call from his agent, Ursula, who is played by Leslie Grossman in her 4th consecutive AHS role after debuting in Cult. Ursula tells Harry he can't go back to the city, and he needs to finish his pilot soon if he wants to remain a career TV writer. Frustrated, Harry hangs up and takes Austin's pills as Alma secretly watches. At the time of this episode's airing back in 2021, fans had a pretty sour taste in their mouths with AHS, partly because of the extremely long break between seasons, but also because of the widely disliked spin-off series American Horror Stories, which had just aired a couple months prior to Double Feature. But with that said, this premiere episode and episode 2, which aired alongside it, had fans back on board with the franchise. The new cinematography style was refreshing, and it was only amplified by the great choice to partially film this season on location in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Because of the on-location shoots and the atmosphere of Provincetown, Season 10 Part 1 really has a visually rich aesthetic that stands on its own when compared to other seasons, especially those that came directly before it. But the cinematography and color grading that was presented to us in Red Tide really felt like they had thrown whatever they were doing in the previous seasons aside in favor of something completely new and refreshing. And when you pair those rich visuals with the absolute all-star cast that Red Tide has, Billy Rabe, Sarah Paulson, Finn Wittrock, Evan Peters, Francis Conroy, and Macaulay Culkin, all in this episode introduce us to vibrant and eccentric characters that really hook you in on this season. In many ways, this first impression of Red Tide was that the season very well could be a return to the golden age of the show. In hindsight, of course, that outlook was hopelessly optimistic, but as you can see within this premiere episode, all the pieces appear to be in place for a great season. That said, the episode doesn't reveal too much about what is really going on in Provincetown, but it instead allows the audience to dip their toes into these mysterious pale people and those little black pills. And lucky for fans at the time, episode 2 aired the same night as episode 1, so just like we did back then, let's now tune right into episode 2 and see what other surprises Red Tide has in store. Episode 2, entitled Pale, starts with the Gardners getting in their car, headed back to the city, when Harry suddenly experiences a rush of visions as the black pill starts to take effect. Flooded with inspiration, Harry runs back inside to write.
I see it all. The whole thing is finally clear in my head.
Harry!
Alma gets frustrated while practicing Paganini on her violin, and she tells Doris that she saw Harry take the pill. Doris confronts Harry about taking mysterious drugs in front of their daughter, and Harry then lashes out at Alma.
I saw you take something, Daddy.
Don't be jealous because I found inspiration and you can't play fucking Paganini.
Harry's just completed his pilot in under 4 hours, and he wants to keep going, but Doris still wants to leave Provincetown. An immediate side effect of this drug is clearly arrogance and being a massive dick, because Harry then lashes out at Doris and says that she won't be able to get an interior design gig ever again if she backs out, since apparently it wouldn't be the first time she's backed out of a project.
They were pushy clients with terrible taste. They didn't understand minimalism at all.
That night, Harry writes till the sun rises, and by that time, he's nearly completed an entire season's worth of scripts. Harry is followed by various pale people on his way to the store, but when they get close to him, they give him a good smell and leave him alone. At the store, Harry is drawn to the red meat, and Karen appears once again to scold him for taking the pill.
Why'd you do that? You should have done that, motherfucker!
He buys a bunch of meat, takes it home, drains all of the blood into a pitcher, and chugs it down. Not fulfilled, he blends the remaining raw meat into a smoothie, and once again, bottoms up. Drinking the blood seems to reinvigorate his inspiration, so he gets back to work. Doris tells Alma that she's never seen Harry like this, but she doesn't want to get in the way of him and his ferocious productivity. Alma then asks her mom if she can take the pill that Harry took so that she can finally master the Paganini piece she's been practicing.
Do you think if I took one of the pills that Daddy took, I could play Paganini better than everyone?
There's no magic pill for greatness, sweetheart.
And outside, Belle and Austin spy on Harry before scurrying off for a snack.
I'm hungies.
While cutting some carrots, Doris accidentally slices her finger, to which Harry impulsively begins to suck violently. Disturbed by his own behavior, Harry goes back to Austin's house to get answers about the pills. Austin says that the pills were made by a mysterious figure named the Chemist, and he proceeds to tell Harry the rules of the game for the season. These magic black pills only work if you have natural talent. The reason why Harry has experienced this rush of inspiration and productivity is because he is naturally talented. What happens to an untalented person if they took the pill? Well, they turn into those pale bloodsuckers who roam the streets and scare small children and pregnant ladies.
Those things you see haunting around town, they took the pill, but they're just hacks, wannabes, dreamers. See, if you take the pill and you don't have a creative seed in your brain already, the pill destroys you, turns you into a flesh phantom, always thirsty, never satisfied or employed.
Austin says Harry will have to drink warm human blood in order to maintain the pill's effects. And Harry's got a big problem with this, so he storms out and leaves the rest of his pills with Austin.
I hope they like your script back in Hollywood land. I bet they will. And then you'll be running back for those little darlings.
Just as Austin predicted, Ursula soon calls Harry to tell him his series has got the green light and none other than Joaquin Phoenix is attached.
Joaquin Phoenix?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Once again at a loss for inspiration, Harry already returns to Austin. This time, Belle Noir's there, and after he takes another pill, they invite Harry out for dinner. Belle tells Harry that they only take the pills during the winter months and they spend the rest of the year living a non-vampiric lifestyle. Belle also explains the methods they have when it comes to choosing who they will murder for their blood.
We find the ones who won't be missed, the ones who are drained on society.
What they're trying to say is poor people. She warns never to feed off of P-Town residents though, since the new sheriff won't turn the other cheek like everyone else. Mickey lets Karen crash at his place during a storm, and the two smoke substances and discuss the plot of Jaws. Karen says that she once knew a guy who was in one of the beach scenes in Jaws, which is a subtle nod to the history of Cape Cod, as that film was mostly filmed around Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. Mickey tells Karen that he loves movies.
I love movies. They're my whole life.
And he's started 5 screenplays that he's been unable to complete. He admits he stole a couple of Belle's black pills, and he suggests that both of them take them. Karen says no way, fame and fortune are not worth becoming a murderous bloodsucker. And Mickey reveals that he's come into possession of some of Karen's paintings, and he calls her truly talented. They fantasize about all the things that they would do if they were rich and famous, before Karen breaks down and says once again that she cannot be like Belle Noire. Mickey's not taking the whole murder thing as seriously as Karen, and he takes the pill with minimal hesitation. Meanwhile, Harry and Austin watch as Belle murders their victim before joining her in feasting on his blood. Afterwards, Belle says Harry needs to get his teeth sharpened like the both of them. So the next day, Harry goes to see Dr. Lark Feldman, a fellow black pillar whose talent is tattoo artistry and body modification. Lark is played by Billie Lourd in her 4th consecutive AHS appearance, just like Leslie Grossman, although Billie's role leaves much screen time to be desired. Lark eases Harry's nerves, puts him under, and gets to drilling.
You do know what you're doing though, right?
With your teeth? I invented this shit.
Back at the house, Alma continues to get frustrated with her Paganini practice, so she sneaks into her dad's bag and takes one of his pills. Shortly after, she is able to play the Paganini piece perfectly. And just like Harry, Alma is also overcome with arrogance after the pill takes effect.
You don't understand art. You don't understand inspiration. You don't understand how hard it is to be great. I am who I am. What part of me would not be me if I was raised by some other perfectly ordinary woman?
Harry departs from his jogging route to make a stop at the Dick Dock.
Welcome to the Dick Dock.
Dick Dock.
Where he kills an unsuspecting man. Later, back at the house, Doris asks Harry where Alma is, and he says he let her go out for a walk alone. Doris gets rightfully pissed, then goes out looking for her daughter all by herself, while Harry continues to disappear into his work. Doris ends up finding Alma in the cemetery where she is feasting on the corpse of a rabbit. This episode answers the major unanswered questions from the previous episode, like what are these pale people and what are those pills? We now more or less know the answers to those things, so now our primary question is, who is this mysterious chemist that Austin keeps speaking about? And of course, how will the gardeners change now that 2 of them are taking the magic little black pills? These first 2 episodes do a great job at hooking the viewer on a simple yet intriguing premise surrounding the core question of whether or not these characters would sacrifice their own humanity for success. So far so good, let's just hope that the writers know how this is all gonna wrap up in the end. But before we unpack episode 3, I want to first rewind for just a little bit to talk about some of the most unique elements of Double Feature's marketing campaign that I didn't mention at the beginning of this video. Firstly, we have Ryan Murphy's infamous social media polls that seem to give fans some power to decide a major season 10 theme. In the middle of Red Tide's production in April of 2021, way too late to be deciding themes on a season that's been delayed for an entire year, in my opinion, Ryan Murphy posted the following on Instagram. The American Horror Story universe is expanding. Comment which story you would like to see the most. He then lists 6 options: aliens, Christmas horror, Bloody Mary, sirens, Piggy Man, and plague. He topped the post off with hashtags seemingly indicating that the polls were for season 10 and not the spin-off American Horror Stories, which was about to enter production on its first season that very month as well. Notably, 2 of these themes would be repeat themes for the show if they were to be included in season 10, since aliens played a role in Asylum, and AHS has built a mythology around their Piggyman character in both Murder House and Roanoke prior to season 10. But aside from the occasional Christmas episode, the other themes at the time were more or less untouched territory. So the battles went down on Ryan Murphy's Instagram stories, where he initially declared the final 2 contenders to be Bloody Mary and Plague. But when this poll ended in a perfect 50-50 tie, Ryan Murphy ran the poll again, only this time he swapped out the Plague theme for Sirens, which many fans were vocally upset about not making the initial final 2. And somehow, the winner of these polls ended up being Sirens. However, spoiler alert, there are no sirens or anything like them in season 10 or any season that's come after as of 2025. However, many of the poll's losers would end up popping up in the AHS universe over the coming years, with aliens, of course, making their second appearance in AHS Death Valley, the second half of Double Feature. There was a Christmas horror-themed trash fire in American Horror Stories Season 1. Bloody Mary had a devoted episode in Season 2. And while the plague itself hasn't been touched in AHS, the show has since explored epidemics like smallpox in American Horror Stories Season 2 and the AIDS epidemic in American Horror Story Season 11, NYC. Regarding this poll, my best guess is that Ryan Murphy expected fans to really go to bat for aliens as a theme, since that was hopefully already decided to be the theme of the second half of season 10 by April of 2021, but when aliens lost, he then shifted his priority to just messing with the fans, while simultaneously scoping out interest for potential future seasons or episodes of the spin-off. But anyways, while we are still on the topic of the spin-off American Horror Stories, the promotional campaigns of the spin-off's first season and American Horror Story Double Feature were both intertwined from the start. As I mentioned, American Horror Stories premiered first in July of 2021 with weekly episodic releases, and with each new week came a new unique poster for that week's corresponding episode. Aside from these posters being really well done, they each contained a hidden quote and character name from someone in American Horror Story Red Tide. The first hint revealed in the Rubber Woman poster was, "Maybe you're one of the talented ones," a quote by The Chemist. The second hint was, "I told you to get out of this place," TB Karen. The third hint gives us our second quote from The Chemist, "Mediocrity drives them mad." The fourth quote was from Harry, "There's a catch, there's always a catch." The fifth quote comes from Austin, "Nothing feels better than that first night on the Muse." The sixth and final quote is, once again from The Chemist, 9 out of 10 of them are going to end up just like you. These quotes didn't reveal too much about Red Tide's theme, but it did confirm to us some very intriguing character names like TB Karen and The Chemist, whose 3 ominous quotes seem to indicate that the character would be central to the season. But just like those polls were a big misdirect, we're now 2 episodes deep and we've not heard a single line of dialogue uttered by any sort of chemist. So where the hell is she? Episode 3, entitled Thirst, picks up where the last one left off as Doris is ferociously scrubbing the rabbit blood off of Alma's face. You know how paranoid this lady is about diseases, so this is probably her literal worst nightmare. Just then, the Gardners are visited by Chief Burleson, who is responding to some 911 callers who spotted Alma covered in blood by the cemetery. The chief notes that they found a rabbit in the cemetery with the same wounds as the man from underneath the dick dock.
Alma is 9 years old. She didn't murder a hustler on the beach.
I know. I just need to ask her some questions.
As Chief Burleson attempts to take Alma in for questioning, Doris feels a pain in her stomach and falls down the stairs. Then at the hospital, the docs say Doris was just experiencing stress-induced false contractions, and they want her to stay in the hospital for a few days for observation. Harry says that while Doris is in the hospital, hospital, he and Alma will move back to the city. But this is a lie. In the car, Harry says he'll threaten Chief Burleson with a lawsuit to get her to back off, and he then questions Alma about her consumption of the pill. Alma shares with her father that she believes that there are only two types of people in the world, those who are exceptional and everyone else.
I feel like everybody else could just disappear one day and it wouldn't matter.
Harry confides in Alma and says that he feels the same way, and he shares with her that that's essentially what happens when you take the pill. You either fulfill the greatness inside of you, or you become a shell of your former self and an outcast to society. After some reflection on his parenting skills, Harry makes Alma promise not to take the pill anymore, and he assures her that she was exceptional even before she took the pill. But Alma's not letting her father off the hook that easily, so she says that he has to stop taking the pill as well. But Harry immediately cannot uphold his end of the bargain, and when Alma catches him taking the pill again, he begrudgingly gives her another pill before they go out for rare steaks at the Mews. Harry tells Alma they must keep this from Doris because she wouldn't understand, and Alma says,
"Why are we still with her?"
Harry shuts this talk down and also makes Alma promise not to feed off of anybody herself. He will provide her with fresh blood. Later, Harry chooses a victim on Craigslist. She lets him inside, but before he can make the kill, he is knocked out by a surprise roommate. He then wakes up tied up in the basement, and this deranged duo gives an evil monologue about how they kidnap people, keep them as sex slaves, then murder them. It's an out-of-the-blue, grossly dark moment in a season that's relatively tame when it comes to this sort of stuff, but nonetheless, Harry is able to escape this predicament by biting through his ropes while the couple is distracted. He then overpowers and kills them before draining them of their blood, and these sickos are literally never mentioned again. At home, he serves Alma up a fresh bowl of blood soup, and the child slams it down like Shirley Temple. The following day, Harry gets a surprise visit from Ursula, his agent. She's here to deliver some big news. Quentin Tarantino wants none other than Harry Gardner to write his first ever limited series. Ursula then pretty much confirms that Quentin Tarantino is a user of the chemist's little black pills in this universe.
No, Quentin writes everything himself.
Up until now. He said something about how he just got married, and so it's harder for him to do what he has to do to write things, and that you would understand what that means and why he wants you to write it.
Ursula plans on staying in town for a few days, and she gets treated to a performance by Belle Noire and Austin Summers, who this time sing a cover of Too Much, Too Little, Too Late, originally by Denise Williams and Johnny Mathis.
Too much, too little, too late to lie again with you.
Do they have to keep doing that?
Ursula, though, is not a fan of this performance, so she interrupts it, clearly not knowing who she's messing with.
Hope to see you around. You look sweet.
She also gives the extremely cold shoulder to Mickey, but later he catches up with her on the beach. Having completed his screenplays thanks to the pill, he hands them over to Ursula in hopes that she will sign him. Surprisingly, she accepts his scripts, and that night Ursula is enthralled with Mickey's writing, and by the next morning, she's grilling Mickey about what's really going on in this town. Cracking under the tiniest bit of pressure, Mickey tells Ursula everything he knows about the pills. Immediately, Ursula sees this as a business opportunity, and she wants to control how these pills infiltrate her industry. She gives Mickey an ultimatum: she'll only sign him if he can get her more pills. So Mickey sneaks into Belle's house that night to do just that. Meanwhile, Belle, Austin, and Harry go out for another kill, but afterwards, they confront Harry for stockpiling blood for Alma. He confesses that Alma is taking the pills, and they tell him he must stop giving them to her. This operation is too lucrative to be left in the irresponsible hands of a 9-year-old. Belle threatens Alma's life if Harry doesn't comply, stating that,
I write some of my best stuff when I fed on young pure blood.
Which of course is why she hires Karen to kidnap local babies. After Harry leaves the car, Belle and Austin agree that both Harry and Alma must die. The next day, Mickey struggles to kill another sex worker at the Dick Dock, but he is ultimately successful. Afterwards, he is startled by none other than Belle Noire in his home.
How do you not just wake up and kill yourself every day?
Belle threatens Mickey, but he boasts about his screenplays catching the attention of a Hollywood agent, and Belle responds with what is perhaps the best line of this entire season.
Honey, you're a paper airplane and I'm a 747. Don't you ever think you're anything like me just because you can fly a little.
Belle then says that Mickey must kill Ursula.
I don't like it when people criticize my singing.
While Chief Burleson investigates the recent Dick Dock murder, we meet a brand new character played by an AHS legend. Holden Vaughn, a witness to the crime, is played by Dennis O'Hare in his 6th AHS appearance, and at the time it was his first season in 5 years, having skipped every season since Roanoke. Holden saw the brawl between Mickey and his victim from afar, so he couldn't make out their faces, but he is incorrectly certain that it was a hate crime. Holden also tells the chief that he works as a bougie interior designer for a lot of the homes in town.
I like it here though in the winter. It's quieter, except for those pale, strange, homeless creatures wearing the AIDS-era couture.
Mickey breaks into Ursula's hotel room and the pair sarcastically negotiate her murder. But when Ursula mentions that studio execs want him to write a remake of Speed Racer, Mickey drops his weapon and goes against Belle's order in order to pursue his own dream. Now taking orders from Ursula, she demands more information about the mysterious chemist, so Mickey takes Ursula directly to the source, the chemist herself, who we soon learn is played by none other than Angelica Ross. The chemist is Angelica's second of 3 AHS roles after murdering the role of Donna Chambers in 1984, the season prior. Despite coming into the fold right in the middle of this 6-episode season, Angelica Ross is credited as a main cast member for Red Tide, and her ominous role was hyped up considerably in the season's promotional campaign, as well as within these first 3 episodes' frequent and mysterious name drops of the chemist. So let's finally see what she's really all about. The chemist is super secretive about her process of making the pills, and she turns down Ursula's deal to make the pills go fully Hollywood. The chemist later holds an emergency meeting with Belle and Austin, where she says that they must wipe out the entire wing of drama that just showed up at her door, and that includes Ursula, Mickey, Harry, and...
What about his wife and kid?
Kill them too.
And side note, the chemist has a mermaid door knocker, which could be a subtle reference to the siren theme that won the fan polls that Ryan Murphy ran. Ursula babysits Alma while Harry goes out for another kill, but instead of watching Alma, Ursula just goes upstairs and takes a nap. While Ursula's asleep, Chief Burleson visits and questions Alma in the living room. In this questioning, she drops a couple subtle nods to previous AHS seasons.
Is it a cult? Do you have some kind of blood disease?
Alma asks Chief Burleson if she's ever had a dream, and this prompts the only insight we will ever get into Chief Burleson's backstory. She once dreamed of being the first female Army Ranger, but she was too ahead of her time. Alma asks if she ever killed anyone while being in the service, and how many people she would have killed to become a Ranger.
I bet you would have killed everyone in the whole country.
Chief Burleson then tells Alma she's taking her back to the station, and once Harry gets back, he's under arrest. Which is definitely the wrong thing to say to this hungry 9-year-old egomaniac vampire who suddenly stabs the chief in the throat, killing her. This is definitely a sudden and unfortunate end to this character, who I think was underused considering the presence Adina Porter has brought to other seasons. In an interview with The Wrap, Adina alluded to the scripts for the season being much campier and comedic than what actually made it to screen, and this decision to push the season into a more serious tonal direction is likely why we don't see too much of Chief Burleson in this final edit. Adina stated about filming the season, quote, "There's what I've read in the original script that was given to me, and then there's what I performed. And then the editor created things, and I was surprised at what made the show and what hasn't made the show." And she continued to say, when we were filming it, there was a little bit more over the top line-wise and character-wise than what's in the finished product. And as an actor, I saw it and I went, oh, okay. They filmed like the raw materials, and then they kind of put things together to see which was the best way they wanted to make this particular dish this year. Adina keeps it pretty vague, but no matter which way you cut it, an actor of this caliber deserved a bigger presence in this season. To make matters worse, as of 2025, Adina has never returned to AHS, but I'm still holding out hope for season 13 later this year. I'm not trying to say that her role in season 10 is why she hasn't returned, but if this does end up being her final appearance on the show, it is a rather underwhelming send-off to an integral piece of the AHS tapestry. Harry comes home to find the chief's body right where Alma left her, while she and Ursula played gin rummy nearby. By the end of this episode, a whole lot of different characters want each other dead, which definitely raises the stakes, but it is also in this episode that I feel like a lot of the season's problems start to arise. Despite the first 5 Red Tide episodes having runtimes exceeding 50 minutes, the show is still struggling to balance all of its characters. For instance, this episode featured 0 appearances from one of my favorite characters, Karen, and it features just 2 very short scenes with the powerhouse that is Lily Rave. Putting 2 of the season's most talented performers on the bench is never a good idea in my opinion, but I will note that Sarah Paulson at this time was pulling double duty with American Crime Story, just like when she did it with Hotel and American Crime Story Season 1, but still, because of the sheer amount of characters that are packed into Red Tide, there's unfortunately no way that all of them can have complete and satisfying character arcs in just 6 episodes. Pair that with the COVID restrictions that this season had to film under, which I feel like most definitely had to have a clause in there that restricted more than like 3 or 4 actors from sharing scenes together. The resulting season ends up feeling like a bunch of separate storylines featuring groups of 3 or 4 characters that all get Frankenstein together in the editing room, but all in all, it is starting to feel a bit disjointed by episode 3. We are still in the good part of this season, and I am just nitpicking at the problems that really start to show up in the finale episode, which just goes to my point that the ending of Red Tide did not seem thought out at all. On top of the screen time being incredibly unbalanced and actors like Lily Rabe and Sarah Paulson being underutilized, we very similarly have a case of a great performer, Adina Porter, being criminally underutilized as she is written out of the season in this episode after only having a handful of repetitive police work scenes. But I'd also say that Angelica Ross is starting to feel underutilized in this season. I mean, by this point in 1984, she had already revealed her character to be a believable villain with a sympathetic backstory, yet here in Red Tide, we still know nothing about her background or her process of making these pills, and she's barely been in the damn show. We are now halfway through the mini-season, so if they're going to answer these questions about the chemist and tie together all of these storylines, then they've got to pick up the pace and do it fast. So let's now see what we have in store for episode 4. Episode 4, entitled Blood Buffet, takes place entirely in the past and kicks off with some much-needed backstory for the chemist, with a title card placing us 5 years ago when the chemist first came to Provincetown. Back then, Holden Vaughn was a realtor, and as he shows the still unnamed chemist a property, she mentions how she was leaving her previous job at a laboratory in Providence, Rhode Island. No further questions asked, Holden sells the chemist the property, and she moves in and begins to set up her very own lab, where we see for the first time part of her pill creation process. We still have no idea what's in them or how they work, but hey, at least we got some good old-fashioned mad scientist shots. The flashback continues and finally answers some of our many unanswered questions about the chemist. One night, she takes Mickey home to her lab and basically gives him the exposition dump we've all been waiting for. She says that her previous job was for the US military, doing research on the creative parts of the human brain with the intent of preventing soldiers from being free thinkers. But in her research trying to figure out how to make people less creative, she also discovered how to harness those same parts of the brain in order to boost creativity. She says this part of your brain is the occipital lobe, which according to my minimal research is actually responsible primarily for visual processing. Clearly this season is operating on some nonsense science, so I'm just gonna go with it. The chemist then reveals that at her previous lab with the military, she tested her pills on apes, and the pills essentially affected the animals in the same way that we've seen they affect humans. In this first meeting between the chemist and Mickey, she offers him one of her magic little pills, but Mickey is too scared to risk knowing if he's truly talented or not, so he does not take her pills. On his way out, the chemist offers Mickey $50 for anybody he can convince to try out her pill. At a local club, Mickey and tuberculosis Karen discuss talent as A Man Earnestly Performs Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel. This man, we'll soon learn, is named Vlad, and he is in fact the same character we've seen chasing some of our main characters around town as a pale person in the present day. The beginning of his inevitable transformation ensues in the next scene as Mickey sends him straight to the chemist. We then see what Belle Noire was up to 5 years ago, and she happened to be in town doing a rather lackluster book signing of her latest novel, a steamy romance story about George and Martha Washington.
Martha suspects George is sleeping with one of their maids, and upon searching the maid's bed, she finds one of George's wooden teeth.
Now that's a season of American Horror Story I'd like to see. After what little crowd was there clears out, the chemist pays Belle a visit.
Who should I make it out to?
The chemist.
The chemist doesn't make her move on Belle just yet, and afterwards we see Belle's nasty ex-husband who does not support her writing career.
I can't look at a $1 bill or Mount Rushmore anymore without wanting to puke.
Belle and this asshole break up, but she is having a hard time accepting this reality. At the Muse, Belle meets the guy who introduces himself to literally every newcomer at this bar, Mickey. Mickey and Belle drink the night away as she rants about her asshole husband and her struggling book sales. Mickey then gives her something that makes her do this. Belle's wild night is interrupted when Vlad barges in, demanding a Bloody Mary and feeling and looking unwell. His drink order of a Bloody Mary could be another subtle reference to one of the options in those polls that Ryan Murphy ran during the pandemic that we talked about earlier. Vlad throws up in the bathroom before his hair begins to fall out. After leaving the bar, Mickey takes Belle to the chemist, and after she tells her about the blood-sucking side effects of the pill, Belle agrees to take the magic substance. Back in her motel room, Belle is flooded with inspiration and she writes from night to morning. Belle's asshole man then arrives and insults her writing and says he slept with another woman last night, so she smashes her wine bottle and slashes her husband's throat with it, before tasting human blood for the first time. This is at least the second time an AHS character has used a wine bottle as a weapon, and afterwards she tells the chemist that despite her immense anger towards her ex-husband, the actual reason she killed him was an intense thirst for his blood.
I can smell his blood through his skin. I was going to die if I didn't drink it.
Later, Vlad visits the chemist, complaining about his dramatic symptoms, including hair loss and extreme coldness. And the chemist basically says, I don't know what the hell is happening to you, but go buy a bigger coat. So Vlad heads to Lark's shop, where we see that Lark had pretty much the exact same setup before the pill entered her life. Lark shows Vlad to her selection of vintage coats, which she says belonged to the fashion gays of New York and Boston during the 80s, who later moved to P-Town, then died, and later when the straights moved in, they donated these coats to Lark's shop. It's a rather elaborate and grim backstory to these coats that all the pale people wear in the season that doesn't really make much sense, but it was foreshadowed in an earlier episode.
Except for those pale, strange, homeless creatures wearing the AIDS-era couture.
Lark tells Vlad that these coats are a hard sell, and
I'll basically give one to you if you take it off my hands.
and thus Vlad, the first pale person in Provincetown, is born. Later, he kills a woman in the cemetery and feeds off of her blood. Afterwards, he visits the chemist and tells her that this behavior is really unlike him.
I'm a vegan.
The chemist tells Vlad that the reason he felt this rage is because
you hate everyone because you now know the truth about yourself. You're not talented.
Her hypothesis is that the talented ones develop an intense superiority complex that feeds their rage against those they deem below them, and the rage of the untalented ones stems from the depression of knowing that they can never truly fulfill their dreams. Vlad lunges at the chemist, and she pulls a gun on him and tells him to never return. The flashbacks then jump forward 2 years, so this is now 3 years prior to the main events of Red Tide, which is when Belle Noire visits Lark's shop in need of a complete makeover. Despite just meeting, Lark can tell Belle is on the pill, which I guess could be just like how the pale people can tell when other people are on the pill as well. And at this point, Lark is also on the pill, and she confesses to Belle that she murdered her ex-boyfriend, much like Belle murdered her ex-husband.
He was boring as fuck, so I drank him dry and burned the body.
Lark then shows off her fangs to Belle, and Belle immediately wants some of her own. Shortly after, she walks out of Lark's shop as a fully realized Belle Noire, and she heads straight to a local drag show. Performing tonight is Austin Summers' drag persona by the name of Patty O Furniture. Another drag queen performing is named Crystal Decanter and is played by a prominent drag performer by the name of Eureka, who has competed on 4 seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race to this day. The other drag queens with speaking roles don't appear to be actual practicing drag queens according to their IMDb pages, but in the background of this bar scene, you can spot a couple other drag legends, including a Drag Race winner, Chad Michaels. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Eureka revealed that Chad Michaels actually had a speaking role in this episode as well, but it was ultimately cut from the episode, which is a real shame. But anyways, I haven't mentioned it yet because it hasn't been relevant to the plot of the episode, but this night happens to be Halloween night, and another thing hidden in the background of this bar is someone dressed in skeleton face paint that is very similar to that notorious Tate Langdon look from Murder House. Patio Furniture, aka Austin, drunkenly stumbles around a performance of Magic Man, and the performance catches the attention of his future partner in crime, Belle, who stays after the show to get to know him a bit more. Austin tells Belle that he came into town after convincing a local theater owner to put on one of his plays, but once Austin got into town, the man completely ghosted him. A tiny flashback within this flashback shows us that that man was in fact one of Belle's victims, but she doesn't tell Austin this. Instead, she offers him the little black pill.
Fuck it.
We then catch back up with the other drag queens who are all hanging out without Austin. Aw. Eureka makes a meta comment about a generic drag competition show that is playing on the TV.
I would do so much better than all these bitches on this show.
Belle and Austin then enter, and Belle begins to open fire. As Belle and Austin feast on her friends, Eureka escapes through the back. She bolts through the cemetery to the nearest bench and calms herself down. But unfortunately, it's lights out for Eureka.
Kick to the sky, even in potato shoes.
This episode gives us some really satisfying and valuable insights into the pasts of some of Red Tide's side characters outside of the Gardner family, and we are finally starting to get some answers about the chemist. Sure, her backstory and the science around the pills remains pretty vague, but at this point it'll have to do in a season that is restricted to 6 episodes and only has 2 left. That said, with the hype built up around the chemist in the promotional campaign and the first 3 episodes, the chemist herself still does feel like an underwhelming villain. Her backstory is vague, her motive is still under wraps, and all of her evil actions are pretty passive, and characters like Belle, Austin, and even Harry are starting to feel more villainous than the chemist. The character of the chemist just needs more screen time to flesh those things out and make her less one-dimensional, and then I would be on board. but it feels like there just isn't a lot of depth to this character, so the writers don't feel like they can give her too many scenes, otherwise the audience will start to catch on. Since she is positioned as the season's main antagonist, her passive writing is definitely problematic to me, but the way Angelica Ross is performing the chemist does make me like the character and keeps me intrigued, but it is truly Angelica Ross that is pulling all of that weight and not the script. Regardless, this episode builds the world of this micro season very effectively, and with the whole season in mind, this flashback episode was very welcome and necessary, in my opinion. Without the backstories of Belle, the chemist, etc., all the other backstories in this episode, this season's side characters would entirely be shallow and one-dimensional. Austin, Karen, and Lark still leave much depth to be desired, but clearly they just wrote way too many characters into this season to be effectively explored in just 6 episodes, and they really shot themselves in the foot with that one because, honestly, all of these characters are interesting, and I wish I could know more about all of them. I also really liked the choice to explore Vlad's storyline in this episode and his transformation. His treatment by the chemist is the chemist's most villainous moment in the season to date, and it is truly a heartbreaking storyline to watch unfold. Speaking of heartbreaking plot lines, episode 5 really says, "Hold my Bloody Mary," because episode 5, Gaslight, may be just one of the most gut-wrenching episodes of the franchise. Gaslight is the first double feature episode to feature Manny Cotto as a writer, but it is the second AHS episode overall to do so, not including the spin-off, and to this day it is one of the most acclaimed episodes of the series by fans. The episode takes us back to the present timeline with the Gardners, and we've skipped ahead just a bit as Doris is in the final stages of labor, and it's a boy. During the whole ordeal, Harry is visibly distracted by each and every drop of blood, and once the doctors leave, he makes some homemade juice shots. Skipping forward even more to when Doris is back in P-Town from the hospital, she wakes up disoriented and confused at the fact that they are back in this spooky-ass town after Harry had told her that he'd moved them back to New York City while Doris was in the hospital. Harry, Ursula, and even Alma then make like the episode title and gaslight the hell out of Doris while taking away her agency and forcing her to question her reality.
This place we decided to...
In 2 or 3 weeks, you'll be out of the woods and we can talk about what to do next. But right now, there's no arguing.
Elsewhere, Mickey pulls into town in his Speed Racer-inspired car, and he offers Karen a ride. And during that ride, he tells her of his Speed Racer cinematic universe that's already been greenlit at the studio. He offers her a role working for him as an artist on the franchise, but she refuses to be a part of a system that runs off of the blood of other people.
Good luck in your universe. Motherfucker!
That night, Doris wakes up to her son's crying, but he's not in his cradle. She soon finds Alma sucking blood from the baby's foot on the bathroom floor. The next morning, Harry yells at Alma for the incident.
It was just a sip.
Alma then confirms what Belle Noire has said in previous episodes, that the younger the blood is, the better the inspiration is. Harry forbids Alma from touching her brother, and Alma once again brings up not wanting her mother in the picture.
I still don't understand why you keep her around. We don't need her, especially now.
Stop saying that!
Doris wakes up and Ursula is right at her bedside, and she immediately tells a made-up story about how Doris was sleep-talking about Alma eating the baby, trying to convince her it was all a dream.
That was real. I know the difference between what is real and a dream.
Ursula blames the quote-unquote break from reality on the lingering anesthesia from the hospital. Changing the subject, she tells Doris of Harry's several new projects that he's lined up while she's been away, and Ursula then makes a snarky comment about Doris's interior design career, and she cuts off Doris's supply of food while giving her a thinly veiled threat.
And when it comes to Harry, if I were you, I would be on my best behavior for a while.
For some reason, they leave Doris alone in the house with the baby, and when they do, she immediately finds Alma's bite mark on the baby, confirming her suspicions even more. Alma walks in right at that moment, saying that she brought her medicine, but one of the pills that she hands her mother is clearly one of the chemist's magic little black pills. Doris immediately picks out the black pill and frantically calls Harry in the room, accusing Alma of trying to poison her. Ursula walks in and says this is clearly postpartum depression, and Doris must be sedated. Harry then gaslights Doris about the bite marks, but she is not having it. Alma reveals that the pills make you great at what you're already good at, and that's why both she and Harry are suddenly prolific in their crafts. Ursula joins in on trying to convince Doris to take the pill, but Harry objects.
Stop it! This is not for her.
Alma asks her mother,
Do you think you're good enough, Mommy?
Doris throws the pills on the ground, takes her son, and runs out the front door, where she is immediately surrounded by the bloodthirsty Pale People. The Pale People can't touch other pill users, so when Harry catches up to Doris, they leave them alone, and he is able to coax Doris and the baby back inside. Meanwhile, Belle pays Karen a visit as she paints near the lighthouse. Belle has also called over a swarm of Pale People to threaten Karen to kidnap the new Gardner baby. But when Karen refuses to help her, Belle destroys some of Karen's work and says,
Just think about trying to paint something with both of your eyes missing.
This line has gotta be a subtle reference to Sarah Paulson's Coven character, Cordelia, who was blinded in both eyes at one point during the season. Doris descends the stairs as Holden Vaughn absolutely rips her mood boards to shreds, and it is revealed that Harry has hired Holden to take Doris's job of redecorating the house. Karen then confronts Mickey about putting Belle on her tail, and she tells Mickey her plans of kidnapping the Gardner's baby so that she can protect it from Belle and the other bloodsuckers. Doris tells Alma she wants to name the baby Eli, and she stands her ground that what she saw a few nights ago was not a dream. Alma confirms this, explaining the benefits of drinking baby blood while on the pill, but she promises not to do it again. Alma once again offers Doris the pill, and she lies to her and says that she believes she is talented enough not to become a pale person. This scene between mother and daughter goes on longer than I can show you, but it's a really tense scene with great performances on both ends that again goes to show that this child actor really can hold her own. Alma convinces her mother to open wide as she airplanes the pill into her mouth, and the deed is now done. Later that night, Karen and Mickey break into the Gardner's house to steal the baby, and they run into Doris, who we see has already started to transform when she steps into the light.
Get away from my baby.
Karen flips out and leaves without the baby for some reason, but she's soon surrounded by Pale People. In the nick of time, Mickey causes them to back off, but he's not here for long. He puts Karen's fate in her own hands by giving her a pill. If she takes it, she'll be sacrificing everything she stands for, but the Pale People will leave her alone. If she doesn't take the pill, well, then she's their dinner. Mickey leaves Karen for dead, and as the Pales close in on Karen, she takes the pill. Back at the house, Doris pulls more of her hair out before shaving her entire head, and she sobs from the horror of what she knows she is becoming. She is then drawn to the sound of her baby's crying, but also his heartbeat. She then goes to the kitchen, grabs a knife, and raises it above her son before Harry stops her, at first not recognizing it's his wife. Doris mutters Harry's name before once again lunging at the baby, causing Harry to lock her in the bathroom. Alma confesses to giving Doris the pill, and Ursula backs that decision up. Back at Mickey's place, Karen refuses to drink blood to quench her thirst, and Mickey asks Karen what her masterpiece is, the painting she wants to be remembered for, and Karen says she knows what it would be. So Mickey instructs Karen to go and paint that masterpiece now so that she can see that the effects of the pills are worth the moral sacrifice of murder.
But first, you have to feed.
As we've noticed, and the chemist confirmed, the pill users develop a heightened rage fueled by an intense superiority complex. So even now, as Harry's wife has been stripped of her entire life, he starts to monologue about how his work is more important than his family, and he says,
I've outgrown you.
He says they were headed for a divorce no matter what.
Maybe this way is actually, in some ways, less painful for you. I can't imagine you having to tolerate seeing me on TV.
As this dislikable man devolves into a full-on dandy mott egomaniac, Doris writhes on the floor in agony. After a while, Harry lets Doris out and leads her outside, where she mindlessly wanders into the streets. In this roller coaster of an episode's penultimate scene, Karen takes Mickey out to the beach where she'll paint her masterpiece. But much to Mickey's surprise, Karen has chosen him as her first feed, as she rips out a chunk of his neck and goes to town. After feeding, Karen then paints her masterpiece before walking to the shore, then disappearing into the waves. This episode is very strong, don't get me wrong, but I don't believe it fully lives up to the praise that it gets amongst the fan base. For one, this episode basically kills off the only remaining good guys, Karen and Doris. So with both of them essentially gone, there is nobody for us to root for in the finale episode. Both Harry and Alma had some redeeming qualities before this episode, but their actions in this episode throw those completely out the window, and literally every other character alive in this season is in on the chemist's evil scheme. Aside from that, all of the characters in this season, even with the flashback episode, feel like they have so much more meat to them than the season can get into in such few episodes, and it is just frustrating, especially when you're nearing the end and realizing that this is really all that there is to these characters. All of that said, there is a lot to love about this episode. As I've said a couple times now, Karen had the best character arc of any character this season, and Sarah Paulson's best work as Karen is in this episode because we truly get to see and relate to her inner turmoil and experiences, and everything she does, you understand why she's doing it and the impossible situations that she is forced into by people that do not give a fuck about her. It is a character who realizes that she does not have a place in this world, and everyone she loves has been corrupted by success. And Karen has never been driven by success. So to see her really come face to face with who she is and how evil her world has become, it's truly a relatable and heartbreaking story to watch. That said, there could have been more of this emotional journey in the episodes that came before Gaslight. There's hints of it here and there, but like I said, Karen really gets sporadic scenes throughout the first few episodes, and she is not a primary focus. Doris's journey as well was an emotional highlight of the season that was performed impeccably by Lily Rabe. I just did a Roanoke deep dive, which you should definitely check out if you haven't already, but the comparison to Shelby Miller in the second half of Roanoke and Doris in this first half of Double Feature feels like a worthy comparison because both performances are just very guttural and impactful to the heart of their seasons. Doris, though, as a character, much like the chemist, could have used much more depth from the writers, in my opinion. We are mostly feeling for her because of how Lily Rabe humanizes her, but on the surface in the writing of this character, we never truly get to know much about her and what is truly behind her desires and motivations. That said, this episode is long and it tells a complete and dramatic story of Doris's family betraying her. And in many ways, this episode could have and maybe should have been the final chapter of Red Tide. But it's not. So now, with no protagonist to root for, let's unpack episode 6 entitled Winter Kills. This infamous AHS finale begins with a town hall meeting featuring Holden Vaughn and the second appearance of Martha, played by Robin Weigert. A state trooper by the name of Remy, played by Dot Marie Jones in her second AHS appearance after playing one of the members of Scum in Cult, arrives at the meeting and informs the council that she is opening an investigation into Chief Burleson's death after two fishermen recently came across her body. And the State Department knows about the group of murders that Chief Burleson was investigating before she died with all of those similar neck wounds. The council brushed this under the rug, of course, because
these are wintertime problems.
Trooper Remy storms out of there, promising to get to the bottom of the murders, but Holden says,
"I'll take care of it."
Holden goes to the chemist, Belle, and Austin, who rightfully blame the chief's death on the gardeners. Holden then threatens them all with zoning issues if they don't kill the gardeners, which the chemist has been asking them to do for a while now. Ursula praises Harry's latest script as his masterpiece, which leads Harry to an announcement. Given that he's stockpiled on years worth of material, and apparently some remnant of his conscience has returned to him, he now wants to be done with this whole blood-sucking business. Harry does a complete 180 from the last episode where he was preaching about how much his art is more important than his family, but now he preaches how he just wants to be a dad and have a soul again, and Alma agrees, at least for now. After noticing their kitchen door is busted, they go and check on the baby, who has been left unattended for God knows how long, but it was long enough to be snatched by Belle Noire, who leaves a note instructing them to meet her at her place.
You didn't hear anything?
Oh, I heard a bonk or two.
Realizing this is a death trap, Harry tries to think of a way out, but Alma says she took out a police chief, so Belle and Austin should be a piece of cake. And besides,
We have Ursula.
but Ursula wants no part of this meeting.
Chicken shit little bitch.
She does have a plan though, and she later goes to the cemetery and tells the pale people that she has a new pill that may be able to reverse their transformations. Harry and Alma show up at Belle's place where she, the chemist, and Austin are all armed with tiny little knives. But just before Belle is able to stab Harry, the pale people begin to break through Belle's windows. Belle and Austin take a couple of them out before they end up overpowered and eaten alive. Ursula barges in the nick of time to save Harry and Alma as she open fires on all of the pale people, of course revealing that her reverse pills were just a lie. With some of the dust settled, Harry promises Alma that the three of them will finally be a happy family again. But Alma says,
I'm sorry, Dad, but it's just gonna be the two of us. I can't let you stop me.
Alma then bites her father's neck and feeds on his blood, leaving the sole survivors of Red Tide as Alma, Eli, Ursula, and the chemist. After the most interesting characters were either given emotional conclusions in episode 5 or unceremoniously killed in an instant in this episode. We are then treated to an epilogue before we kiss Red Tide goodbye. We find ourselves in Los Angeles, where the Hollywood Walk of Fame makes its second AHS appearance, and it proves again to be a dangerous place for tourists as a pale person in police uniform begins to attack several passers-by. This is where we finally get a clue towards the chemist's motives, as a reporter informs us that this has become a recurring incident, as several LAPD police officers have started to turn pale and break out in these bizarre murderous outbursts. The reporter says that there is one thing that links all of these crazed cops, though. They all have had several race-based complaints filed against them.
You shouldn't be messing with police.
I'm sorry. Didn't you kill and eat a cop? Every one of those pricks had no business protecting and serving. Racist, sadistic garbage.
Alma then asks the still unnamed chemist how she knows the cops won't be able to trace these incidents back to her and her pills, to which the chemist says can't happen since the only people who know what's in the pills are her and the military.
Only people that know about it are me and the military scum who paid for me to develop it. And they're not giving up their top security clearance to help some local detectives figure out what happened to a bunch of shitty cops.
I don't know. The military might be raising an eyebrow at what you're getting up to in this epilogue, but what do I know? Speaking of, Ursula arrives and reveals that she's been pushing the chemist pills at local Starbucks stores to any and every aspiring artist, thus creating lots of successful clients, but also lots of pale people. Later, Alma makes it to the final 2 candidates for a prestigious orchestra, and she's not super friendly with the other guy.
I said I'm better than you.
Did you listen to my audition?
I didn't have to. I know I'm better than you. I'm better than everyone.
The other guy bites back with some snark of his own, saying Alma will never get to the spot because her talents are too niche and she's impossible to understudy. And he says something that begs some rather forced connections to Freak Show.
It becomes a freak show. You're the bearded fucking lady, kid.
Off-screen, Alma kills the guy and somehow drags him across the hall and down some stairs. And then elsewhere, Ursula guest speaks at a screenwriting seminar where she gives a little black pill to every person in attendance. Cut to a full-blown pale person apocalypse breaking out in the streets of Los Angeles as the chemist watches the chaos with little baby Eli in her back seat. Roll credits. I guess. This episode of Red Tide unfortunately tosses most of the season's potential out the window with a rushed finale that lacks the heart and atmosphere of the previous episodes, while also leaving us with more questions than answers. And because those last two sympathetic characters, Doris and Karen, were killed off in the previous episode, the episode inexplicably tries to turn Harry good again after episode 5 made him out to be a total irredeemable villain. This switch up of Harry gives the viewer whiplash and makes his death have no emotional weight, despite being this season's main character. Similarly, our beloved side characters like Belle Noire or Austin Summers get abruptly shot and brushed to the side in favor of a 15-minute long epilogue featuring just the characters of Ursula, Alma, and the chemist. But instead of learning anything new about these characters or completing their non-existent character arcs, what we do get is just more of the same. That is, until the episode devolves into a complete pale person apocalypse that complicates the show's shared timeline, and on top of that, feels reminiscent of the spin-off show American Horror Stories, whose first season had episodes that devolved into similar apocalyptic events. And with those shitty episodes in mind, the finale just feels cheap and like something we've seen before. And while the chemist is one of the last characters standing, I feel like I still know next to nothing about her. Not even her name. Before the finale, we knew that she was some sort of evil genius with a past in the military, and the only new thing that the finale tells us about the chemist is that her motive apparently was to target racist cops with the pill, turn them into zombies, and I don't really know what her plan was from there because all of this gets kind of explained in 2 or 3 lines and we're just kind of expected to go with it. But to me, I don't feel like what happened in the finale feels connected to all the events that went down in Provincetown during the first 5 episodes. This season did have its fair share of corrupt cops and government officials, but the chemist's targeting of specifically racist LAPD cops does not feel connected to anything the season gave us before, and all these years later, I'm still scratching my head about it. Ultimately, the chemist's backstory and her motivations behind creating the pill needed a lot more work and explanation in this finale episode, in my opinion, and maybe even throughout the season, because in the finale, I can't even tell if the chemist intended for this apocalypse to happen or if Ursula just went rogue. But to me, it seemed like they were both working together and both in on whatever the hell was going on, but I still am struggling to see what the master plan is, all in all. And I would have loved any indication of what the future of the chemist character holds, especially now that she is in custody of baby Eli, and what his role is in all of this. But this is how they chose to conclude this season, and Death Valley does not connect to Red Tide in any tangible ways, so we truly will never know. For a season that had almost 2 full years of pre-production, the conclusion felt like the writers had never truly thought out how this story would end. And that is a huge shame. The season started with the Gardners in Provincetown, so I expected it to end with that same family in that same city. Not in Los Angeles with 3 loosely connected characters enacting a truly vague evil plan. By the end of it, there's just one Gardner remaining. Alma is out living her best vampire prodigy life, but she and her parents were extremely underwritten throughout the whole season, so Alma being the sole survivor doesn't hold too much emotional weight. All 3 of the Gardners are very shallow characters that are pretty much only defined by their creative endeavors, give or take. Doris has her struggling interior design business and is additionally characterized by her pregnancy and her fixation on Lyme disease. But aside from that, there's not much else, and each of those things beg for more depth and explanation. And then Harry's just a screenwriter, and Alma's primary motivation is to be the best violinist ever. And to make matters worse, when both Harry and Alma take the pill, they both start to have pretty much the same arrogant and evil personality. Only by the finale, we see that Harry can just turn his off and on when the script calls for it. And I've spent a lot of this video saying that the chemist is underwritten as a character, and that's because she is. But again, I cannot stress enough how watchable Angelica Ross makes this bad writing with her line delivery, accompanied by the chemist's great costumes and makeup. Looking back at the chemist, it's hard not to feel like she was written as a stripped back version of Donna Chambers, one of the main antagonists from 1984, also played by Angelica Ross. I mean, both are scientists who have within themselves morally justified their inhumane experiments that put several human lives at risk, and those very experiments conducted by both characters serve as the central premises of both 1984 and Red Tide. But if you were to compare the amount of story given to Donna Chambers in 1984 to The Chemist in Red Tide, it's extremely clear that The Chemist does not have a quarter of the amount of depth that was given to Donna Chambers. Donna Chambers is a character whose backstory we get to see, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that makes her characterization by the end of the season fully fleshed out and fully realized. And while we may not agree with most of the things she does in the season, at least we understand why she did it and why she was able to justify it. But we'll just have to get into more of that when I do my 1984 deep dive. Speaking of Angelica Ross, though, as the season's highest ranking antagonist, it's strange that characters like Belle or Austin got so much more screen time than The Chemist. Similarly, the screen time of AHS legends like Adina Porter, Billy Lord, Dennis O'Hare, and Sarah Paulson seem to be frustratingly limited throughout the season as well. Again, it feels like Red Tide packed way too many characters into only 6 episodes, and then they randomly only chose to give Karen an actual character arc, and everyone else was left for the fishes. But I'd have much rather they cut out some of these superfluous roles that don't get too much screen time in favor of devoting more of the story to characters like the Gardeners, Belle, Austin, and the Chemist, so that they could have stronger arcs in these 6 episodes. With most of my gripes with Red Tide being said, there is a lot that the season had going for it before episode 6 pulled its bait and switch. The choices made by cinematographer Andrew Mitchell are subtle but extremely effective, and shooting on location in Provincetown during the winter was a phenomenal choice, as the weather and landscape provide a truly incredible atmosphere. Sarah Paulson initially left a lot to be desired in her first few appearances in Red Tide, as Karen was pretty much restricted to sporadic appearances, where she repetitively jumps out at Harry yelling ominous warnings, but by episodes 4 and 5, the writers and Sarah Paulson make up for that with a fully realized tuberculosis Karen who does end up living up to her iconic name and look. I haven't talked too much about Mickey in this video. I'm just not a big fan of his character, and I don't understand why he would put Karen in that situation, other than the fact that these pills just turn everyone into evil supervillains, which is just annoying writing if that is the case, especially because Harry does do that switch up in the finale, proving that even if you are on the pill, you can try to be a good person. Regardless, Macaulay Culkin himself brings a lot to the role of Mickey, much like how Angelica Ross elevates the underwritten Chemist and makes her more interesting as well. I thought Macaulay was a standout during the season, and I would love to see him return to AHS one day. Lily Rabe, Leslie Grossman, and Dennis O'Hare also give their roles the 200% effort you would expect from them, and each of them have their shining moments, even if none of their characters are all that great. In the end, Red Tide was a story of squandered potential, but with the series' highest reported budget and one of its most stacked casts, there's still a ton to love about the season. While writing this video, I did my 3rd rewatch of Red Tide, and I was able to find a lot more to love about it this time than the first 2 times I experienced it, where I was previously definitely unable to see most of the good amidst what I saw as, and still would say is, an abomination of a finale. But in the current state of the world, where there's a battle between artists and artificial intelligence, I really loved Karen's story and thought it brought up a lot of similar feelings to how I feel when I see AI used in art. Karen did dream of success so that she could be out of the clutches of evildoers like Belle Noire, but she did not create her art in pursuit of fortune and fame. So when that magic little shortcut arose to potentially put Karen on that fast track to the high life, Karen throughout the season refused to sacrifice her integrity and stain her canvas with innocent blood. I'm not trying to say this season has an intentional AI metaphor by any means, but given the world's sudden acceptance of generative AI, which tends to just regurgitate and plagiarize other artists, it does feel like with AI, each and every one of us is provided with a very similar choice as the characters in Red Tide. Would you sacrifice your integrity to prioritize quantity over quality? At the end of the day, AI is a shortcut that replaces human thought and processing. So personally, personally, I feel like if I were to use AI to outline a video, that would be disingenuous because I did not create that outline or those thoughts, and for all I know, those thoughts could have come from an author that I would never know the name of because the AI hasn't cited its sources. So to me, generative AI is never the way to go, but if you are using it on like cover letters and shit like that, I'm only slightly raising an eyebrow at you guys. But if you're someone who's out there selling AI generated art, writing AI generated articles, videos, screenplays, songs, or anything like that where you are genuinely replacing the work of a human, I'm afraid that you might just be a Mickey. But with that, that is my deep dive of Red Tide, one of the most controversial seasons of AHS. I'm sensing a theme here with my deep dives. I've done some very controversial ones so far, and with the second half of Double Feature being Death Valley, what I would consider the worst season of American Horror Story ever, we're just gonna continue going down that trend of controversy. But I do intend on doing some of the older seasons very soon. That was gonna be next on my list, but those older seasons are really heavy and I needed a break. With that said, if you made it to the end of this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave this video a like and comment some of your thoughts on Red Tide. Who are your favorite characters? Did you love the season? Did you hate it? Anything in between. My deep dives have been performing really consistently and I've been loving like engaging with you guys in the comments, but I would love for these to be even bigger for the amount of time and effort I am putting into them, and I know that can happen, so any help you guys can give me, even if it's constructive criticism, leave all your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a like if you liked it, subscribe definitely if you're not subscribed already, and I will see you guys soon with Death Valley.